Welcome everyone to the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals podcast series featuring great discussions, insight, and resources on all things related to education and administration. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Season 5 of the MASSP podcast. My name is Ryan Casey, and today to kick off this 5th season of the podcast, we're going to be talking with some awesome leaders from across the state that are going to share some insight just to how their school has been dealing with the return to school plan because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what challenges have they faced? What decisions have been made? Have those decisions changed along the way and some other things? So today I'm happy to have Jennifer Bustard from Mona Shores High School be here, as well as Andy Kowalczyk from Bay City Central High School and Steve Carlson from Sandusky Jr, Senior High School. All three of them have been active members in the association. Jen, of course, is our past president on the board. Andy Kowalczyk is our new president, and Steve Carlson is a former president and also an NASSP board rep as well. So thanks for being here, guys. And I'm going to jump right in with the first question. And I just want you to quickly share, what is your current, as of current, I mean August 27th, as we're recording right now, what is the current plan for your school or your district for returning to school with students? And Jen, we'll start with you.
You bet. Well, thanks, Ryan. Mona Shores High School right now is on a hybrid cohort schedule. We landed on Anchor Team A will go to school twice a week and have asynchronous learning, 2 days a week in person and then 3 days at home. And then Anchor Team B will be in person 2 days and at home 3 days. And so we also have about 20% of our school population that will be virtual, and those students will be serviced their general core through Ingenuity, and if they're taking AP courses, they'll be through Michigan Virtual. So our in-person students just had registration today, so it was so great to see them, and they're excited to learn what school is going to look like.
Awesome. And how about at Bay City Central, Andy?
Thanks, Brian. At Central and all the Bay City schools, we are fully remote. We do have a virtual school that we started early in the spring, and if the numbers hold as to what they were yesterday, that would be our largest building in the district because we have around 1,400 students, K-12, that have chosen the virtual track. And we are, like I said, remote, but we do have our cognitively impaired and our emotionally impaired students are coming back into the building face-to-face.
Very good. And what about at Sandusky Jr, Senior High, Mr. Carlson?
Thanks, Ryan. We have two options for our students at this time at Sandusky Jr, Senior High and within our entire K-12 district. We are offering 5 days of face-to-face instruction following all of the required safety protocols that Phase 4 has. For students and families that are more comfortable with a virtual option, we do have a full virtual option. That virtual option is not a separate entity or a separate school. It is Sandusky Community School District teachers leading and guiding the students through that remote instruction. Knowing that a number of our parents expressed a desire for their students to be able to move in and out of a virtual setting sort of as needed or as they see fit, we're trying to do our very best to have the pace of instruction in the face-to-face match the pace of the instruction in the virtual.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure, like those who are listening, there are some similarities across the state with schools and their plans, and there's, of course, a lot of differences as well. So can you share now just what has the experience been like arriving to this decision that you just shared, what the plan is, again, as of right now? Maybe perhaps this was the plan all along way back in July or June, and you were able to stick with that plan. If so, I applaud you. But if not, what went into those decisions, and maybe what did that process look like?
Well, speaking for Sandusky Community Schools, we wanted to wait until we had the governor's roadmap, which came out early in July, late June. Knowing that the regulations within the roadmap were going to largely dictate what we could and what we couldn't offer. So when the roadmap came out, we tore that apart really quickly and saw what different options might be possible And we did a quick survey of our families to see what their wants, what their needs, what their desires were, mostly centered around face-to-face instruction or virtual instruction. So using the survey to guide us, that's where we arrived at the decision that our community was asking us to offer a 5-day option while still providing a virtual option for students whose families wanted them to do their learning from home. So it was largely driven by the expressed desires of our community, and we're doing our best to put together a plan that meets those needs.
Thanks, Steve. Andy or Jen, how about you?
Yeah, I'll go. At Central or at the Bay City schools, our ISD had meetings throughout June and maybe early July with educators talking about this because they wanted it to be a team type thing without the ISD, so students weren't jumping from one to the next. And we did come up with our plan to be in person, face to face, and we were working hard at making that happen. And up until I think 2 weeks ago, our board meeting, we had our health department come talk to the board members and talked about the struggles, the things that were not looking great. And that's when our board kind of did the 180 and said, okay, we are now remote. So that was a quick turnaround from us, from trying to solve problems of face-to-face to the next day. We now have a lot of things that we have to figure out to get to this spot where we're remote, including the teachers, students, parents. It was a lot, and there's a lot still going on.
So Ryan, at Mona Shores, we waited also for the roadmap from the governor's office, and we put together a district team, return to school team, and really looked at the information from our students and our parents and our staff. And we really looked at two models. We looked at the block schedule for hybrid, and we also looked at the cohort schedule that we landed on. And so really worked through both of the models and listened to the voices of our department chairs as we got through it. In fact, early on, we landed on we'd like to go to school 3 days a week and then be off 2, because obviously we learned during emergency learning in the spring that the kids needed to have that face-to-face interaction to really be engaged. And so after we did another survey with our staff, we found out that, you know, really virtual learning and virtual teaching, there's so much more to it, and they really wanted more planning time to create lessons and videos and really dive after the pedagogy. So we actually moved from a 3-day in-person to 2 days. And so we got the feedback from our community. By August 10th, they had to make a decision whether they're going to take option 1, which would be in-person, or option 2, which would be virtual. And so we really wanted to make sure that our families felt comfortable with that. We provided a lot of information, shared some things also at our board meetings, and it's gone fairly smoothly. It really has. Today, again, we had our registration, and it was great to see the kids, and we're gearing up for a Tuesday start after Labor Day.
Thank you for sharing. Even though you have all had different methods or whatnot making these decisions, I think one thing that listeners will notice as you were talking was the fact that you were communicating this and you were talking and getting feedback from your teachers, from your families, within the other stakeholders within your district. So even though you guys all ended up at different decisions, I think that was one common theme that carried through. So hopefully others are feeling confident in their decisions that are listening, knowing that they involve those important groups as well. So should there be a change between now and the start of the year, or into the beginning of the year, whether it's for the better, maybe somehow, although unlikely, we get moved into stage 5 or whatnot, and we can do more in-person instruction with less safety guidelines and whatnot needing, or what might more likely happen with we gets more restricted. Do you have backup plans in place should you have to switch within a couple days notice? Has that been a discussion? Have you had any talks about that, or have an official plan underway, or has it been more or less let's focus on just the plan we do have right now, making sure that's ready to go?
Yes, in Bay City schools, since we are fully remote, our plan is in mid-October to look at the situation, the status in our county, and to see if it looks likely that we could go back face to face, and then we would do that at the end of October, beginning of November. So that's our plan as of now, is we're going to hold until that time and then see where it takes us, and we plan to go face to face at some point. So we will start finding out the answers to some of those questions that we need to in the meantime.
And I would assume that most who are starting remotely would be in a similar boat with a similar plan as well. Andy, how about at Mona Shores or at Sandusky?
So Ryan, at Mona Shores, we really took a look at the recommendation to be thinking about what does it look like in phase 4, and then select a model that could shift back to phase 3 and shift forward to phase 5. And in that thinking, we really felt that the hybrid cohort schedule, if we had to shift back to phase 3, would prepare us, because the teachers and the students are already in a situation where they're practicing the routine of learning from home with that support from the staff members. So also, if we shift to phase 5, we kept the 5-period day, we kept the bell schedule. So if and when it's safe to come back, full schedule, all 5 days, we'll be ready for that transition as well.
And in Sandusky, we have the situation where and this will be the situation for most schools in the state, I realize, but every one of our teachers will be teaching both face-to-face and teaching in a virtual environment. And like a lot of schools in the state, we don't have a lot of experience in this, so we recognize that we need to be flexible in our daily plans, as well as being flexible in the sense that we can move back into phase 3 if necessary, or if we're lucky enough, we can move into phase 5. What we're doing, since we have about 80% of our students that plan to attend face-to-face, we are engaged in training with our teachers on a new LMS and also with some new purchased curricular content that's being used. Obviously, that content and that LMS is being used for the virtual kids, but we intend to do sort of a heavy lift in the first couple weeks of school, making sure the face-to-face kids are utilizing the LMS and gaining familiarity with it. With the anticipation that if we all are forced to go back into phase 3, whether it be for a couple weeks or whether it be for a longer period, we want to make sure that the students that are attending face-to-face have those skills in navigating the LMS and knowing how to contact their teachers and knowing how to utilize resources. So if we are all forced to go remotely, hopefully that transition's much smoother than it was for us.
So knowing that it's been a very hectic time planning for this, as I can imagine, what, in your opinion, has been the most challenging aspect of trying to arrive at this decision or trying to plan for the start of school, knowing it's so different than years past? I'm sure you could probably go on and give me 10 or more. I'm going to challenge you to pick the one most challenging aspect, and if you could share that out, and then we'll do a follow-up to that.
For me here in Sandusky, what's been most challenging, and I've heard this echoed from other school leaders and from other educators in general, so many students, so many families, even some community members are wanting to know what's this going to look like, and wanting to know down to very granular details. And we certainly understand that, and we certainly respect that, we honor that, and we want to address that. But the thing that's been the most challenging for me is the fact that we have to communicate to families that we're not sure what all this is going to look like. Here is our plan. These are our intentions. This is what we're seeking to get out of our plan in educating your children. But we have to be honest that in the sense that we've not done this before, in the way that we'll do it this fall, we can't guarantee what it's going to look like. So we're asking families to be patient. We're asking families to trust us. And we're asking families to know that if what we're doing isn't working in a certain area, that we're going to make adjustments, but that we should expect this to be a little bit messy, especially at the start.
Ryan, I can share that on August 10th, based on our survey, we were expecting about 5 to 10% of our families going virtual. On the lakeshore here, our rate is very small, and our health department has shared that you could go back in person. And so we were expecting between 5 and 10%. So on August 10th, when we got our data and we saw that it was 20%, and in 2 short weeks, we had to create a virtual high school, and parents that thought it was going to look one way and really wanted answers to questions that we didn't have fully developed yet, because we weren't anticipating that many families, really put us into a position where we were working tirelessly to come up with the best opportunity for those kids, especially our students who are in the advanced placement program. And we landed with the Michigan virtual program. We know that that has a strong reputation, and we just really felt that for virtual in our district, if we're going to be in that hybrid model, that we couldn't be asking our teachers to have lesson plans for each course that are in person, virtual, and then also for the students who are full virtual. And it just wasn't settling in with parents. And so we really had to spend a lot of time having conversations about what is reasonable, what is practicable, and what can we ask people to do in just 2 short weeks. So those things have been the most challenging, and the more conversations we have, as we know, knowledge is powerful. And as we work through those conversations, whether in person or over the phone call, people are now more understanding. But there's so many unknowns, and this is just a very uncertain and challenging time for parents, and they want answers to questions that we don't have answers to yet. And we get that, and we just meet them where they're at and seek to understand and support them as best as we can.
In Bay City, I think our biggest problem was the staffing and scheduling due to students leaving and going to our virtual program. And they were still doing that up until last week. So we made our schedule, found out a bunch of teachers had to go to the virtual program to meet their needs. And then that had to happen again this week. So it's been tough with that schedule and with losing classes due to those students leaving and putting them together. It's been tough, and we, I think, have 10 less teachers in our building than were in our building last year. So it's that's been a struggle, and hopefully we got it to a point now, where we hope all those teachers have their schedule complete and they know where they're at. And we told the parents that it's a 1 semester commitment. Otherwise, they could be coming back and forth, and we wouldn't be able to do that. So the last couple of weeks has been difficult with our scheduling and getting the teachers into the classrooms that they need to be in.
Well, thank you for your honesty with those answers. And it's interesting listening to you share that there's been some new challenges, like, trying to live in this gray area of not having all the answers, even though parents want them, or finding out you're going to have a different population of students that wanted virtual and no longer want it or whatnot. But then even as Andy mentioned, some of those age-old challenges that pop up every year in terms of staffing, right? And changes in staffing and class sizes and schedule changes, right, are still there, but now they're just happening in such a even more challenging environment. So the logical follow-up question I want to ask now, and because I know you are all positive people, and I've seen you with your leadership style, not getting focused on what's the challenging or difficult part. So what has been the most rewarding part of this process that you are, we're glad to see or notice that you can share with our listeners?
For me here in Sandusky, if you look for the negative, that's all you're going to see, and if you look for the positive, you're going to focus on that. And I've found that despite all the challenges, it hasn't been too hard to find lots of different positive things going on. If asked what's been the most rewarding, honestly, it's been the number of people this summer that have simply checked in on me, whether it's been, our MASSP colleagues, whether it's been teachers at the school, other administrators here at the school. And though I mentioned there's some parents that have some angst because they don't know exactly what school's going to look like for their kid, and I can't tell them exactly how it's going to play out. We've had a lot of parents who have expressed their support, their compassion, their empathy, and just, a lot of people checking in to make sure that I'm okay. And that has made it a nice reminder for me to make sure that I'm checking in on my people as well.
So Ryan, I think it's just an absolute blessing to see people out in the community, see kids running cross country, talking to parents at a tennis match, because those kids get to be active on the lakeshore, and to hear the positivity from the parents and the gratitude and the thank yous, and the kids, I think I see their smiles behind the masks, and just to hear the love of teaching. Again, when we finished our in-person summer school, one of our teachers posted, she said, "I feel alive again. I am doing what I do best. I got to teach this summer, and I am just back to my happy place." So just hearing our teachers saying we can do this, it is hard, we know it, it's different, we feel like first-year teachers, but we can do it. But just really hearing from the different stakeholder groups, whether it's our parents, our kids, our staff, our community, a good large portion of them have bought into the work that's being done, have been so appreciative, and that's what keeps you going through. And I get it, those people that are frustrated and are angry, and we'll just help them through it. And that's just all we can do, is just help them, understand them, and just really focus on the positive, for sure.
I think at Bay City, the thing that I really like seeing it's our teachers trying these new things. We've had 3 days of PD this week, and the majority of it was working with Zoom and Google Classrooms. And to see all these teachers who didn't really have an interest in that, previously to COVID, they're getting into it. And I think it's really going to change the way they teach, because even when we do go back face to face, they're going to have all these tools in their toolbox where students can be handing in homework in different ways, and they can be communicating. And if we have a snow day, they'll have these connections where we can still have that learning go on. So I'm really excited to see our technology, how it has changed, and the excitement that this is going to bring.
Absolutely. It's funny. I'll share something too. I was in a district doing a training the other week, and I believe it was the staff's first day back. So, they were just, you could tell there was a buzz, right? They were excited to be back with one another, although it was different than years past with social distancing and masks. They were so excited, you could tell, to be around each other, to be back in that familiar place. I made a joke and said, I think you guys are so happy to be back. I might just punt on our training today, and I don't think you guys would even mind if we just do bloodborne pathogen videos all morning. And so that got a good laugh. And so I think of that when we are facing all these challenges, about the students who are just going to be, I think, glad to be back, and for the teachers. And I know you three probably never really left this summer, but I know you're excited to, even if it's only in a virtual setting, to see those faces, to see the teachers and be working with them again, like you normally would be at this time in the year. So our plan is to talk to our three guests again in a couple weeks, once the school year has started up and all of the students have returned, just to find out again. So what else changed between right now, this day, August 27th, and when they came back? What other challenges presented themselves? What other decisions had to be made? And so I'm hoping that our listeners who are joining us right now will either hang on for a few more minutes when we either put that into this episode or listen to the second episode. Again, we are starting the 5th season of the MASSP podcast. You can listen to all of our podcasts by heading over to massp.com or wherever podcasts are available, including the Apple Podcast Store. So thank you to Jennifer, Andy, and Steve for joining us. Thank you to the listeners for listening in to the MASSP podcast, and we will catch you next time.